Part-time in the classroom, part-time online. That is the word from Governor Roy Cooper about how he would like to see the new public school year look here in North Carolina. And with recent polling showing the public split on all of this, the best thing to do for North Carolina kids, well, it's really up to everybody to decide. One of the folks who's been following all of this is the John Locke Foundation's Vice President for Research, also Director of Education Studies. He is Dr. Terry Stoops. He joins us now with a look at what the school year might be like as it comes up very quickly. Terry, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
What's your reaction to Governor Cooper's announcement that he wants to go with Plan B, as he refers to it?
Well, I don't think anyone was surprised that Plan B was going to be the choice. There have been rumors for weeks that Plan B was the choice, and the governor delayed that decision and waited an additional 2 weeks beyond the point at which he originally said that he was going to announce the coming school year. So I don't think anyone is surprised it's Plan B. There was probably a desire in the Cooper administration, the Department of Health and Human Services, and everyone else involved, that we would get to a point where Plan A, this is the minimal social distancing that would allow kids to go to school 5 days a week and just have minimal sanitation and social distancing requirements, was going to be possible for the fall. I think that would have been the ideal, and perhaps they were waiting for the possibility of announcing a Plan A, which would have given maximum flexibility to school districts to offer even more stringent requirements under Plan B or full-time remote learning under Plan C, but that didn't happen. So I don't think anyone was surprised to hear that it was Plan B, and now we're going to have to see how each school district attacks their next school year, which is just about a month away.
How will this work? I mean, how can you have kids, are they going to be alternating days in and out of the physical building? And then what does this mean? I mean, in terms of practicality, are teachers going to have to be walking around with Clorox wipes all the time? And I don't say that flippantly. I mean, I say that seriously.
Well, it depends what district you're in, because districts were asked to come up with 3 plans, Plan A, B, and C, in preparation for the governor's announcement. And those Plan Bs look different from school district to school district. Some have alternating days, some have alternating weeks, some have morning shifts and afternoon shifts. Some go part in person, part online. So there really isn't a way to generalize what Plan B is going to look like for North Carolina because it's going to vary from district to district. There are some districts that are even talking about going full-time remote learning because that is something that they're allowed to do. They don't have to do any in-person instruction if they don't want to. Now, I think that would be tremendously inconvenient for parents, especially working parents. But still, that is an option that's left open to them. And right now, Guilford County is considering going to a full-time online education for most of the school districts. So it is going to be in the next month, school districts revealing their plans, talking to educators and parents on how to implement those plans, and then very likely changing those plans as the school year starts. Because as we know, there are going to be plenty of plans in place that will seem good on paper, but once you get in the school building, will not work. And so there's going to be a lot of adjustment on the fly.
Terry, we know that school districts across the state are very different in terms of size and the makeup of their students. You've got the huge districts in Charlotte Meck and Wake County, and then you've got much, much smaller districts in other areas of the state. And what that makes me wonder is if this idea of the local officials really taking control, knowing what is best for their students, what the challenges are, et cetera, in each district, even down to each school, does it kind of make sense that the local folks should just make their plans and move on?
It absolutely does make sense that the locals should have been given much more flexibility in this. And this is a point that was made by the Republican leaders of the General Assembly, is that there are parts of the state, there are school districts that don't have much of a coronavirus problem, that could go back to school under a Plan A where there's really minimal attention to coronavirus mitigation plans. There is the possibility that there are districts that could easily do a 5 days a week, perhaps with masks, with very minimal social distancing, with as close to a traditional classroom setting as you can get, with some precautions taken in place. But this is not the case under the governor's plan. The plan that the governor set forth was that he was going to make a decision that all school districts would be subject to across the state, with some flexibilities built in. But as the Republican leaders of the General Assembly point out, it's not flexible enough, because it really is a nod to the one-size-fits-all idea that each school district needs to approach their coronavirus mitigation measures in a common way. And we know that is not necessarily the case.
That's such an important point, because the governor has said, well, okay, Plan B is the floor, and if you want to be stricter in terms of limiting in-person contact, you can go to Plan C, the all-remote virtual learning. But he is prohibiting school districts, the ones that you described that may not have much of an issue at all or smaller number of students. He's preventing them from actually doing what makes sense for them. That's a head scratcher.
It certainly is. And when you consider that charter schools are also subject to the governor's orders, these are individual schools. So we're not talking about school districts here. And what makes sense for a charter school, a single school, may not make sense for what the district has to do. So we're not just talking about school districts here, we're talking about charter schools. And charter schools, from the beginning, in my opinion, should have had much more flexibility under the governor's orders than they do now. But unfortunately, now they have to do what school districts do, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Terry, as parents and teachers and administrators have been adapting now for months based on the coronavirus, we've seen the virtual education for several months earlier in the spring. Now we've got this hybrid system that people are trying to adapt to. Is it accurate to say that this is now crystallizing for everyone involved in education, that kids are different, circumstances are different, parents have different situations, some are working parents, some are not? In other words, is it helping people understand that they have some choices and they should be able to decide what works best for them?
Gosh, I hope so. I was called cynical by a radio host because I'm not sure that parents, or at least the system, will get that message. And that's because they are really caught up in the details. Looking at the bigger picture, that's the message that I hope this conveys, is that this experience proves that one size fits all is a very, very poor approach to educating children, and that really meeting their individual needs requires a whole lot more flexibility, a lot of educational options, and a lot more differences in the types of schools that are available. I want them to get that message, but as a parent, as a spouse of a school teacher, there's so much attention right now to the details and the unknowns and a whole lot of fear out there that it's going to take a while before that message sinks in. But here at the John Locke Foundation, we'll make sure that it does.